If we can begin perhaps first of all by talking about whether, in your view, we are actually approaching, if you like, a new normal and what that actually means.
Yes, it's an interesting concept, the new normal. From the perspective of our viewers, what that means is changing what are our expectations for the future. In the past, depending on what country you lived in, and perhaps speaking more from the point of view of Western Europe or the United States, there was this expectation in the post-World War II period of growing consumption, higher incomes, more credit. Well, these days may be changing now, and the new normal for the US and for Western Europe is certainly not going to look as optimistic as the old days, but the new normal in developing countries may be much more optimistic. Growing consumption, more credit available, higher standards of living. So these expectations is what we're considering, and this shapes people's view about what to expect in life.
And in terms of the inclusion of the new developing economies in the new normal, as we're calling it, do you see a constructive role for those economies? And do you see them playing that constructive role? Or are we likely to see, as some people are suggesting, a fight for the top, if you like, with the developing countries like China taking over and bringing institutions that previously were ignored and creating new ones like the G20?
Look, the world evolves. I think this globalization, this growth, what we're seeing is that a new level of countries, the emerging markets, are taking a bigger share of the growth. They're responsible for more of the growth of the economy in the world. And this is good. This is good. We don't want to keep the world is not always going to be the same with the same countries at the top. There's actually, when you look back in history, at the turn of the century, you can see the Europeans were very concerned about the newly developing North American countries who were underpricing products in Europe. And of course, that referred to the United States and Canada. So at one time, even the US and Canada, North America was looking like an emerging market. And now we have new emerging markets, and I think this is a positive development for society, that things, for the world economy, that we can see some movement. New people are developing and raising their standard of living. So this is, things will change. China's going to get more power and influence in the world, and that's the way things evolve.
Yeah. So what role then do you see for fora like Davos, where you are bringing both business as well as the politicians? We've seen, if you like, some kind of ineffectiveness in the new global institutions that are being brought about by the growth of countries like China. Do you see a continuing role for places like Davos, and what sort of role really?
Davos is interesting because this is actually a private sector sponsored initiative. The members, the World Economic Forum, is not an official organization in the sense of it being sponsored by any government or any international body. In fact, it's an organization that is supported by private companies. And they've expanded this and taken on a social responsibility, if you like, to bring in a number of stakeholders, let's say, in the process. And that's this was the idea of Davos going back to the 1970s when it was first started. It's to bring in stakeholders to look at a problem. So in this conference, we have big business, we have government and policymakers, we have people from civil society, and having all of them come together, this is the beauty of Davos. We have other organizations like the International Monetary Fund, which has a forum as well, but it's a more confined and restricted forum where central bankers get together, ministers of finance, and they share information. So this is I think there's a breakthrough in this sort of public-private partnership type idea. And you have to remember this is for information purposes. There's no, whatever is decided at Davos or any good ideas are on paper until governments actually adopt them and put them into practice.
So there's a place for fora like Davos from what you are saying, but is it working,
Absolutely.
do you think?
Yeah, I think that we're getting those ideas now. This is a forum to bring ideas from globally around the world. In the old days, there were not so many large international companies that came from outside of the US and Europe, and now that's much less the case. And China, for one, which is becoming very important in the business world, in the from global economic point of view, I think we want to hear from those business leaders, particularly in Asia and Latin America, what their thoughts are and the issues that they're confronting. And we want those to be on the table as well.
Yeah. Now, one of the flashpoints is this year and in most of last year was, of course, the issue of currencies. We saw headlines flashing across the globe talking about currency wars between the developed and developing countries. In your view, could a forum like Davos be able to solve such intractable problems like the currency dispute?
Well, what they do at this Davos, they've divided up a number of world problems or risks into different categories. One category that they look at, they call the macroeconomic imbalances. And this is where they're examining the currency volatility, problems of debt, fiscal sustainability issues. Now, as I said, we can look at this, and the information that is coming out, and we're seeing a lot of academic presentations as well. This helps people understand why this movement in currencies may be for the long run good, but the fact is it's only the governments can manage economic policy. Davos does not have any policy mandate, and they can't do anything themselves. But they help people to understand about this currency volatility, which is perhaps just the natural effect of living in a market economy.
Yeah.
We do get volatility a lot of times.
No, for sure we do. Now, Europe is sick, and today we saw numbers showing the UK economy. In fact, it was a major surprise. We saw numbers showing the UK economy contracting when the expectation was that there would have been an expansion of about 0.5%. Now, we all have heard about the problems that are bedeviling the smaller countries, the pigs, if you like. At Davos, is there potential that you could perhaps get big business leaders, taking aside a prime minister, a president, or a king or a queen, and giving them advice that they would listen to outside of the glare of the press in their home countries, where perhaps a quiet word would work better? In fact, that's what I'm trying to say. A quiet word would work better than at home, where we know politics rules.
Absolutely. I'm sure there's lots of private meetings that go on. I think President Zuma is there, bringing a number of businessmen along as well. And no doubt at these events, some of the more important work goes on over dinner and in private meetings where views are shared, deals are initiated, and so forth. But you mentioned about the UK. This is symptomatic of some of the problems of Europe. UK in particular in this economic crisis raised its public debt enormously. And the debt problems in Europe now are beginning to bite in a number of countries. And it's raising this is the issue for the developed or the advanced countries who are facing fiscal problems and public debt problems that have to be sorted out, particularly in Europe. And we've seen the Greece and Ireland situation already, and people are looking also now at Spain and Portugal to see how that's going to develop.
Yeah. Mark, quickly, should we expect President Zuma to bring anything?
To bring anything? I think President Zuma represents, because South Africa is important and only emerging market on the African continent, and is now, let's say, getting more recognition in its stature by being asked to join the BRIC group of countries. He brings Africa, he represents Africa, let's say, at the forum, and should be promoting the concerns of African countries, sub-Saharan African countries, at the forum. And I'm sure he's going to do that.